Section 3.3 RA-2, a sample of college students was asked how much they spent monthly on delivered Thai food. We want to approximate the mean for the cost. The first title here is the monthly Thai food cost, and here are the classes. We have 5 classes, going from 10 to 19 to 99, 20 to 29.99, and so on, all the way to 50 to 59.99. And then over here, this is the number of students, which represents the frequency. So you can see here that we have 6 for the first class, 17 for the second class, 29 for the third class, 15 for the fourth, and then 6 for the last class. So I'm going to go ahead, and what I'm going to do first is we want to make sure that we can get the total of the entire frequency. So we're going to add 6 plus 17 plus 29 plus 15 plus 6. And so therefore, now we have the sum of the frequency, which is equal to 73. So when we add up all these numbers, we get 73. Okay, now the next thing that we want to do is now we're going to create 2 new columns. Okay, so when we're approximating the mean, we need to make sure we know how to find the midpoint, and then also we're going to take the midpoint and multiply it by each individual frequency. Now, the first thing we need to do is we need to find the midpoint of the first class. So the midpoint of the first class is taking the 2 lower class limits, which is 10 and 20. So if we take a look here, the first one, we're going to get 10, we're going to add 20, and then we're going to divide that by 2. And that gives us 15. And so then what we're going to do is we're going to take 15 and then multiply it by the frequency of 6. And so 15 times 6 is going to give us 90. Okay, now we're going to go to the next row. Okay, so now we're going to look at the next 2 classes. So we're looking at 20 and then 30. So now we're going to take 20, add 30, and divide that by 2, and that gives us 25. So therefore, 25 represents the midpoint. And then we're going to multiply it by the frequency of 17. So 25 times 17 is going to give us 425. Okay, next. The next 2 lower class limits are 30 and then 40. So we're going to add 30 plus 40 and then divide it by 2, which gives us 35. So we're going to take that midpoint of 35 and then multiply it by the frequency of 29. So when we multiply those together, then we get a total of 1015. Okay, next, we're going to take the next midpoint, which is 40 and then 50. So 40 plus 50 divided by 2 gives us 45. So 45 is the midpoint, and then we're going to multiply it by the frequency of 15. So 45 times 15 is going to give us 675. Okay, now the next thing that we want to do is, well, technically, if we wanted to go the next class further down, we would end up with 60 to 69.99. And technically we have 0 listed because we don't have that. But that's going to allow us to be able to now determine the next midpoint. So the next midpoint is going to be the following. We're going to be able to then take 50 and then add 60, divide that by 2 to give us 55. So therefore 55 is our midpoint. And then we're going to multiply it by the frequency of 6. So 55 times 6 is now going to give us 30. Okay. Now, the next thing that we want to do is we want to make sure that we can add the total for the last column. So what we're going to do is we're going to add up everything. So 90 plus 425 plus 1015 plus 675 plus 330 is now going to give us 2,535. And then when we add up the total frequency, we can see that we get 73. So now what we're going to do is now we're going to use this formula. So recall that the formula here for the sample mean is taking the sum of the midpoint times the frequency, which we end up getting as 2,535 in that last column. And then we're going to divide it by the sum of the frequencies, which was 73. So therefore, 2,535 divided by 73 gives us $34.73. And therefore, that represents the sample mean. So it's important to then just create these columns, and then it'll allow you to be able to solve the problem a lot cleaner.